Hey everybody, this is Stevie. I am Existing Characters Die Horribly on Tumblr, and I've seen some questions about how to get started making GIFs. And I thought back to when I got started a few years ago, and I remembered it was a lot of just trying to figure stuff out for myself. And I really just wanted to show you how easy it can be to get started. I know that's really the hardest part. Once you figure out how to do the basics, then you can just go in and experiment. So I really want to emphasize that what I'm showing you now are just the basics, how to make a basic GIF, because I don't want you to make GIFs the way I make them. I don't want you to color them the way I color them. I want you to feel confident that you have the basics that you can go and discover the kind of GIFs that you want to make. So let's get started. I use Adobe Photoshop. You can go get a free trial period for Photoshop to experiment with it and see if it's what you want to use. And the reason why I want to show you how to use it is because it makes the hardest step in getting started easy, and that is actually getting your screen caps into your timeline. And Photoshop does that all for me. So here I'm going to go to Video Frames, from File to Import Video Frames to Layers. I'm sure it's pretty similar in Windows. And then I'm going to select this particular M4V, but any video file. There's a pretty limited number of video formats that it can import. It can't import APIs and stuff like that. But once you have an MP4 or an M4V, you can actually go ahead and import it. I've done just a short, quick one so that we don't have to spend too much time searching for stuff. But I usually just use this on the full episode and then just go and find the section that I want. Because it has this nice sort of frame video that lets you see what's going on. So in this case, we're just going to capture the section of Will taking a little sip and starting to introduce Winston to his new pack. You can then limit the number of frames that you take. You can either take every single frame. My standard is every 2 frames. That gives you a good smooth animation while letting you do a reasonably long GIF if you want to. And then the important thing is this make frame animation box. Make sure that's checked. So I'm going to say, okay, Photoshop, go do your magic. So now what it's doing is going through the video and capturing those frames, which it's each individual screen's capped, which is now our layers over here in this side. And then over here, it's actually done the timeline for us, which was always the most difficult part for me getting started, was getting to this step. And now you can see, you can press this play button and you can see that it's actually animating there. Now at this point, I've actually imported this from 1080p video, so it's really, really large. So I'm not even going to try to export this as a GIF at this point. And I'm just going to clean it up a little bit. I'm going to remove these few extra frames at the beginning and here at the end. And now what I'm going to do is go ahead and size it. So I'm going to go to Image Size. In this case, I know that I want to make it a full-size GIF for Tumblr, so I know that the width there is 540. So I'm just going to ask it to resize it to that for me. So now we're close to the point where, in theory, we could just export this as a GIF. So if we went to File, Export, I use Save for Web Legacy. That's someday it's going to go away, but I liked the interface, so I'm still using it by habit. And in this case, we can see now what it might look like. And this is the feature I use a lot, which is the preview. So we go here, we preview our image, and we see that, wow, Will's drinking awfully fast here. What's that about? So let's go back here, and we see down here in our animation timeline, these numbers down here, and that's the delay between the next frame. So obviously the delay is a little too slow, so we're going to select all those frames, and let's change it to 0.1 seconds and see what happens in this case. In this case, I just use the command keys to do that instead of showing you in the UI. We're going to preview it again. And now we see he's drinking at a much more reasonable rate. We know Will drinks a lot. So that's starting to look pretty good. I like what I'm seeing. So now, at this point, is really where you get to experiment and explore and decide what works for you. I'm going to show you a couple of quick tricks in order to sort of lighten up and improve the colors in this GIF, add some text, and then we'll be done. Because as I said, this is really just an introduction to get you to a point where you can experiment and play with what you want. So if you've seen my other tutorial, I've done a tutorial on the main tool that I use to brighten GIFs, and that's using a divide layer. And the big trick is deciding what color to start with. And here it's actually really easy because Will is wearing a white shirt. So we really just want to get things so that shirt can be white. And the way we can with this technique is to go and come in on a shirt, and I'm just going and I'm zooming in and zooming in and zooming in. So on my computer, that's a Command plus. And I can go and say this looks about where it really should be absolutely white in the color. So I'm going to add the solid color layer that's that color I just chose. I'm going to set it to be divide. And now the thing is, this layer is now selected so it shows for all the other ones underneath. Now we can see that Will's shirt looks white. Things are a lot brighter now. So that looks a lot better already, just with that one layer. So that's pretty cool. So I might then say, and this, I'm just telling you, this is some of the things I think about, but really experiment with what works for you. I might look at the curve and say, I kind of want to change some of the different levels here. So I use the auto button a lot just as a way to sort of get an idea of where to start from. And so I might say, Photoshop, what do you think's good? In this particular case, it actually thinks I did pretty good so far. Then there's this element right here, this feature right here, the click and drag, which really can be a lot of fun with curves, because then I can just say, like, I think this is a little too bright right here in this section. So I'm going to drag it down a little bit. And maybe over here, I want a little more brightness on Will's face. So I've adjusted the curve. You can also adjust it here. There's all kinds of ways that you can experiment with this. And I can say, I think that looks pretty good. So what would that look like if I actually exported it at this point as a GIF? So again, say for Web Legacy, preview. And wow, doesn't that already look a lot better? And that's just 2 layers. I know it can be really intimidating, and it is for me. I've made GIFs for years, and it's intimidating for me when I see people who have, like, 10 layers. I rarely use more than 5. So at this point, I think I'm pretty happy with it is. I just want to make a fun GIF that I can use for some occasions. So what I'm going to do is going to put some text on it. So I choose the text tool. I'll let you find out for yourself how to find new fonts. I use Google Fonts a lot because there's a lot of great free fonts there to find new fonts. But in this case, I'm going to use this one. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to change the color here and just sort of set it to white. And I'm going to type Welcome to the Fandom, because I think this would be a great new GIF for Welcome to the Fandom, because I always need new ones of those. And then I want to center that, obviously. So the important thing to remember here is make sure you've selected the first image in your timeline, unless you want it to jump around. This is another thing, experiment with this, read up about animations and the kind of fun things that you can do. But in this case, I want the text to stay still throughout the image. And then I'm going to use this feature, in case it wasn't obvious, in the Mac world, I right-click, bring up blending options, and there's this feature called stroke. I was so happy when I discovered this feature when I first started making GIFs. Why can't anybody read my text? So this actually does a stroke around all of the text. You can see now you can actually read it even against Will's shirt. And now I'm going to move it, and Photoshop gives you these nice little purple lines to see that you're centered. Now I'm using my arrow key to bring it down, but you can move it however works for you. So now I think I'm pretty happy with that. So again, I'm going to see where I am. Save for Web Legacy, preview. So now I'm pretty happy with that. But at the same time, we need to keep an eye on this element right here, the size. So Tumblr is pretty strict about this. When I started, you couldn't have anything larger than a megabyte. Now we're up to 3 megabytes. This is obviously bigger than that. So what I need to do is make some choices in order to reduce the size. There's lots of tutorials and suggestions and guides on how to do this. The primary thing that I do is I just reduce the number of frames that I have. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and try to see what happens. So I have 48 frames. What if I take it down to 40? Go ahead and preview it again. And now it says that it's 2.832, which I know from experience with Tumblr, that's going to be fine. Take one more preview. That seems like a pretty fun GIF. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. As you can see, I have plenty enough GIFs. And that's really it. You've now made a GIF. Now we have a great GIF that we've just saved, and we can use that wherever we want to. Post it to Tumblr, post it to Twitter. And what I really hope is that is giving you some exciting ideas for just how to get started, how easy it is really to get started, and really then the fun is learning how to use all these different adjustment layers that you can do to play with. For example, the colorings. That can be a lot of fun. And it's really just exploring what works for you, what's interesting to you, and have fun. So thanks for listening. I hope this gets you excited and lets you make your own GIFs, and I can't wait to see what you make.